Suffering is an undeniable part of life. It is woven into the very fabric of existence, manifesting in countless ways through loss, failure, betrayal, illness, and the deep uncertainty that shadows every human endeavor. No one escapes suffering, no matter how fortunate or privileged they may appear. The first step toward transcending it is to acknowledge it fully, to look at it without flinching, and to recognize its presence as an inescapable reality rather than an anomaly to be avoided. Many people spend their lives running from suffering, pretending it doesn't exist, numbing themselves with distractions, or blaming external forces for their pain. They avoid deep introspection because to truly face suffering is to confront the most painful truths about oneself and the world. But avoidance only strengthens suffering's grip. Ignoring the weight of your burdens does not lighten them. It allows them to grow in the shadows, festering into something more destructive. The suffering you refuse to face today will return tomorrow, often with greater force, demanding your attention in ways that are even more painful and unmanageable. Acknowledging suffering is not the same as resigning to it. It is not an admission of defeat, nor is it an act of passivity. It is, in fact, the first true act of courage. To look at your suffering honestly, to examine the precise nature of your pain, its sources, and its implications, is to lay the groundwork for transcendence. You cannot overcome what you refuse to see. If you are suffering, you must say to yourself, "This is real, this is happening, and I will not turn away from it." This process requires brutal honesty. It is not enough to say, "I'm unhappy," or "I feel lost." You must go deeper. What exactly is causing your suffering? What patterns in your life have led you here? What role have you played in perpetuating your own pain? These are difficult questions, and they demand answers that may be uncomfortable. Perhaps you have made mistakes that contributed to your suffering. Perhaps you have remained passive in situations that required action. Perhaps you have lied to yourself about what you truly want or who you truly are. None of this is easy to admit, but the alternative, remaining blind to your suffering, will only ensure its continued presence. At the same time, acknowledging suffering means accepting that some aspects of it are beyond your control. Life is not fair, and suffering is not always a direct result of our choices. Tragedy strikes without warning. People betray us. Circumstances shift in ways we never could have predicted. There is an inherent randomness to suffering that makes it all the more difficult to bear. But even in these cases where suffering seems arbitrary and cruel, you still have control over how you respond to it. The pain may not be your fault, but what you do with it is your responsibility. Many people fall into the trap of self-pity, believing that because their suffering is unjust, they are entitled to resentment or despair. But resentment only deepens suffering, making it more corrosive and all-consuming. The longer you indulge in bitterness, the harder it becomes to escape it. Acknowledging suffering does not mean wallowing in it. It means seeing it for what it is, recognizing its inevitability, and refusing to let it define you. One of the most difficult aspects of suffering is its isolation. When you are in pain, it is easy to believe that no one else understands, that your suffering is unique and that you are utterly alone. But suffering is a universal experience. Every human being, in some form, carries a burden. When you acknowledge your suffering, you also open yourself to the understanding that others suffer too. This realization can be both humbling and empowering. You are not alone in your pain, and because of that, you can learn from those who have walked the same path before you. History is filled with stories of individuals who have endured immense suffering and emerged stronger. People who have faced unthinkable hardships, war, persecution, loss, illness, and have used those experiences to deepen their wisdom and strengthen their character. Their suffering did not destroy them, it transformed them. And the only reason that transformation was possible was because they did not deny their suffering. They faced it, engaged with it, and in doing so, moved beyond it. If you refuse to acknowledge suffering, you will be forever at its mercy. It will control you from the shadows, influencing your actions and shaping your reality in ways you do not understand. But when you bring it into the light, when you look at it directly and accept its presence, you take back control. You stop being merely a passive recipient of pain and become an active participant in your own transformation. Suffering, when fully acknowledged, becomes a source of strength. It forces you to grow, to confront hard truths, and to build resilience. It teaches you what matters, clarifies your values, and strengthens your will. But this transformation can only begin when you stop running, stop denying, and start facing your suffering with open eyes and an unyielding heart. Only then can you begin the process of rising above it. Taking responsibility is one of the most difficult yet transformative choices a person can make. It is far easier to blame external factors for the hardships and disappointments in life, to point to circumstances, other people, or even fate as the source of one's suffering. But blame, while temporarily comforting, is ultimately a trap. It keeps you stuck in the same cycle of frustration and helplessness, reinforcing the idea that you are at the mercy of forces beyond your control. The moment you take responsibility, however, everything changes. You move from being a passive recipient of life's difficulties to an active participant in shaping your own destiny. Responsibility is not the same as fault. It is crucial to understand this distinction because many resist the idea of taking responsibility due to a belief that it implies blame. You are not responsible for everything that happens to you. There are injustices in the world. There are tragedies that strike without warning. People can be cruel and circumstances can be unfair. But regardless of the source of your suffering, you are responsible for how you respond to it. That distinction is the key to reclaiming power over your life. The moment you recognize that your choices, actions, and mindset play a role in your suffering and your success, you begin to see a path forward. If everything that happens to you is someone else's fault, then you are powerless to change anything. But if you accept that your decisions, no matter how small, contribute to the direction of your life, then you regain control. Even in the worst circumstances where external forces have dealt you an unfair hand, there is always something you can do to improve your situation, even if it is just adjusting your attitude or preparing yourself for future opportunities. Taking responsibility is not a burden, it is an opportunity. It means recognizing that while life is difficult and often unjust, you are still capable of improving your condition. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, there are actions you can take that will make tomorrow better than today. It could be as simple as changing the way you think about your problems, as practical as improving your daily habits, or as profound as choosing to forgive and move forward rather than remaining stuck in resentment. The degree to which you take responsibility determines the degree to which you can change your life. One of the most common ways people avoid responsibility is through excuses. Excuses provide temporary relief from discomfort, but they do so at the cost of long-term growth. When you blame your failures on luck, society, your upbringing, or other people, you are also surrendering the ability to change. You tell yourself that you are a victim of circumstance, and in doing so, you strip yourself of the power to create something better. Responsibility, on the other hand, forces you to confront reality. It requires honesty, the willingness to admit where you have fallen short, where you could have made better choices, and where you still have room to grow. Taking responsibility also requires discipline. It is not enough to simply acknowledge your role in your own suffering. You must also take action. If your life is in disorder, it is your responsibility to clean it up. If your relationships are strained, it is your responsibility to work on communication and understanding. If your career is stagnant, it is your responsibility to develop new skills, seek new opportunities, or put in more effort. No one else will do these things for you. The moment you accept that, you stop waiting for external forces to change and begin the process of changing yourself. This is not to say that responsibility means shouldering the entire weight of the world alone. It is possible to take too much responsibility, to blame yourself for things that were truly outside your control, or to take on burdens that are not yours to carry. Healthy responsibility involves recognizing the line between what you can influence and what you cannot. It means focusing your energy on the areas where your actions truly matter, while letting go of the things that are beyond your control. Another important aspect of responsibility is understanding that it is an ongoing process. Taking responsibility is not a one-time decision. It is a continuous practice. Every day presents new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to grow. Responsibility requires vigilance, an ongoing commitment to honesty, effort, and improvement. It is not easy. In fact, it is one of the hardest things a person can do, but it is also the path to true strength and self-respect. Those who take responsibility for their lives tend to be the ones who achieve the most and find the deepest fulfillment. They do not waste time feeling sorry for themselves or blaming others for their misfortunes. Instead, they take action. They improve themselves, work hard, and face challenges head-on. They understand that life is difficult for everyone, but rather than using that as an excuse to remain passive, they see it as a call to become stronger. The beauty of responsibility is that it creates meaning. When you take ownership of your struggles and your future, you begin to shape your own story. Instead of being a victim of circumstance, you become the hero of your own journey. You recognize that suffering is inevitable, but stagnation is optional. And with every small step you take toward bettering yourself and your situation, you prove to yourself that you are capable of overcoming adversity. Life is inherently difficult. Struggle is not an anomaly. It is a fundamental aspect of existence. Many people spend their lives trying to avoid hardship, seeking comfort, ease, and security at all costs. But the avoidance of struggle does not lead to strength, fulfillment, or meaning. It leads to weakness, stagnation, and a life devoid of purpose. The reality is that struggle cannot be escaped, but it can be approached in two very different ways. You can be forced into suffering by circumstances beyond your control, or you can choose to engage in voluntary struggle, challenging yourself before life challenges you. It is the latter that leads to growth, resilience, and true strength. Choosing voluntary struggle means deliberately stepping into difficulty. It means seeking out challenges, pushing yourself beyond what is comfortable, and willingly engaging with adversity rather than waiting for it to find you. This is not masochism or a love of suffering for its own sake. It is a recognition of a profound truth. Growth only happens through struggle. Muscles grow when they are stressed and torn apart in the gym. Skills develop when they are tested through practice and failure. Character is built when a person faces hardship and overcomes it. If you avoid struggle, you avoid growth. One of the primary benefits of voluntary struggle is that it strengthens you before life forces hardship upon you. Life is unpredictable. Illness, loss, failure, and disappointment are inevitable. Those who have never chosen to struggle voluntarily, who have never deliberately tested their limits, are often crushed when true adversity strikes. They have never learned how to endure discomfort, how to persist in the face of pain, or how to remain disciplined when things become difficult. But those who have regularly engaged in voluntary struggle have already built the necessary resilience to withstand life's hardships. They have conditioned themselves to endure, and as a result, they are not easily broken. Voluntary struggle takes many forms. It can be physical, such as engaging in intense exercise, training in a sport, or challenging yourself to push past physical limitations. It can be mental, such as pursuing difficult intellectual work, learning new skills, or exposing yourself to uncomfortable but necessary truths. It can be emotional, such as confronting fears, having difficult conversations, or taking responsibility for past mistakes. In all cases, the goal is the same: to build strength by facing difficulty rather than avoiding it. One of the most effective ways to embrace voluntary struggle is through discipline. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when you do not feel like it. It is the practice of consistently engaging in effort even when motivation fades. Many people wait to feel inspired before they take action, but inspiration is unreliable. Discipline, on the other hand, is a foundation that allows progress to continue regardless of mood or circumstance. By committing to disciplined routines, waking up early, exercising regularly, working hard, and maintaining focus. You train yourself to embrace struggle rather than shy away from it. Another crucial aspect of voluntary struggle is the willingness to fail. Many people avoid difficult challenges because they fear failure. They would rather remain in their comfort zones, never attempting anything beyond what they already know they can accomplish. But failure is not something to be feared. It is something to be pursued. Every failure teaches a lesson. Every setback provides an opportunity to improve. The greatest successes in life are often built upon a foundation of countless failures. Those who achieve the most are not those who avoid struggle, but those who embrace it, fail repeatedly, and continue moving forward despite the setbacks. Embracing voluntary struggle also leads to a deep sense of meaning. A life without struggle is a life without purpose. People often believe they want an easy life, free of hardship and difficulty, but such a life quickly becomes empty and unfulfilling. True satisfaction comes from overcoming obstacles, from pushing through pain, and from achieving something that was once beyond reach. The most meaningful experiences in life, building strong relationships, mastering a skill, pursuing a worthwhile goal, require effort, sacrifice, and struggle. When people look back on their lives, it is not the easy moments that stand out, but the moments where they overcame great difficulty and proved to themselves that they were capable of more than they thought. By voluntarily taking on challenges, you also inspire those around you. Strength is contagious. When you push yourself beyond your limits, when you strive towards something difficult, when you demonstrate resilience in the face of hardship, you encourage others to do the same. Many people live in fear. Fear of failure, fear of discomfort, fear of struggle. But when they see someone willingly embrace difficulty and grow because of it, they begin to realize that they too are capable of more than they believed. There is no escaping struggle in life, but there is a choice in how you engage with it. You can passively wait for difficulty to arrive unprepared and overwhelmed, or you can actively seek out challenges, strengthening yourself in the process. Those who choose voluntary struggle do not become weaker, they become stronger. They do not become more fearful, they become braver. They do not become more fragile, they become more resilient. And when life inevitably throws hardship their way, they are ready. In the end, the choice is simple. Avoid struggle and remain weak. Embrace struggle and grow strong. Those who take the easy path may find comfort in the short term, but they will be unprepared for the inevitable difficulties ahead. Those who take the hard path, who push themselves before life pushes them, who embrace voluntary struggle rather than run from it, will find strength, meaning, and the ability to endure whatever challenges come their way. Life is a battleground, and every individual is faced with trials, suffering, and obstacles. The world is filled with uncertainty, injustice, and pain, and it is easy to be overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Many people live as though they are powerless, as if the difficulties they face are insurmountable forces that dictate the course of their lives. But this is a lie. No matter how difficult the circumstances, every person has a choice to cower in the face of adversity or to stand up and confront it with courage. This choice is what separates those who become victims of their suffering from those who transcend it. It is the mindset of the hero, the individual who voluntarily takes on responsibility, confronts hardship, and strives towards something greater. A heroic mindset is not about arrogance or recklessness. It is not about seeking fame or recognition. It is about adopting the belief that you are capable of facing life's struggles head-on, regardless of how daunting they may seem. The hero does not wait for someone else to solve their problems. The hero does not shrink from suffering. Instead, they step forward willingly, taking on the burden of existence and working to make things better, not just for themselves, but for others as well. The foundation of the heroic mindset is responsibility. A hero does not blame the world for their suffering. They do not fall into the trap of resentment or self-pity. Instead, they take ownership of their lives, even when circumstances are unfair or difficult. Life will always contain suffering, but a hero does not allow suffering to define them. They understand that responsibility is the antidote to despair. By focusing on what can be changed rather than what cannot, they find a way forward. The act of taking responsibility, no matter how small, transforms a person from a passive victim to an active participant in their own destiny. A heroic mindset also requires courage. Fear is a natural response to the unknown, to hardship, and to the possibility of failure. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it. The hero understands that fear cannot be allowed to dictate action. They recognize that growth comes from confronting what is terrifying and difficult. Whether it is the fear of failure, rejection, or suffering, the hero pushes forward, knowing that avoidance only leads to weakness. Every time a person chooses to act in the face of fear, they become stronger, more capable, and more prepared for the battles ahead. Another key element of the heroic mindset is the pursuit of meaning. The hero does not seek pleasure or comfort as the highest goal. They understand that an easy life is not necessarily a fulfilling one. Instead, they strive towards something meaningful, something worth sacrificing for. This might be a personal mission, a cause greater than themselves, or the commitment to becoming a better version of who they are. Meaning provides the foundation for endurance. When suffering arises, it is meaning that allows the hero to continue forward rather than collapse under the weight of hardship. Without meaning, struggle is unbearable. With meaning, struggle becomes a path to transformation. The hero also embraces discipline. Strength does not appear by accident. Success is not the result of luck. Those who accomplish great things do so because they are willing to put in the effort day after day, regardless of how they feel. Discipline is the ability to act in accordance with your highest values and goals, even when motivation fades. The hero understands that discipline is the key to progress. They do not wait for the right mood or the perfect conditions to take action. They commit to their path, pushing forward even when the journey is difficult. A heroic mindset also involves service to others. True heroism is not merely about self-improvement, it is about using one's strength to help others. A hero does not climb to the top alone. They lift others up as they ascend. They take on burdens not only for themselves, but for those who cannot yet bear their own. This is what separates the hero from the selfish seeker of power. Their strength is not just for themselves, but for the betterment of the world around them. Finally, the heroic mindset requires resilience. No hero's journey is without failure. There will be setbacks, losses, and moments of doubt, but the defining trait of a hero is that they do not give up. When they fall, they rise again. They learn from failure rather than being broken by it. They understand that persistence in the face of difficulty is what ultimately leads to victory. The hero is not necessarily the strongest, the smartest, or the most talented. The hero is the one who refuses to quit. Anyone can adopt the heroic mindset. It does not require extraordinary talent or luck. It requires a choice. A commitment to responsibility, courage, meaning, discipline, service, and resilience. It requires the decision to stand up straight, to face life's difficulties head on, and to move forward despite the suffering that inevitably comes. In the end, the question is not whether struggle will come, because it will. The question is how you will face it. Will you shrink back, hoping to avoid pain, only to find yourself weaker and more fragile over time? Or will you rise to meet the challenge, forging yourself into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable? Those who choose the latter path will find that they are not only able to withstand life's hardships, but that they are able to create something meaningful from them. And in doing so, they will not only transform themselves, but inspire those around them to do the same. Struggle is an inescapable part of life. No one moves through the world without encountering pain, disappointment, and hardship. Some suffer through illness, some through loss and others through the crushing weight of failure or loneliness. It is easy to see suffering as nothing more than an unfortunate consequence of existence, something to be avoided or minimized at all costs. But if suffering is inevitable, then avoidance cannot be the answer. Instead, the question must be, what can be gained from struggle? The answer is meaning. If you can find meaning in your suffering, you can endure it. If you can endure it, you can transcend it. Many people become consumed by their suffering because they see it as meaningless. When pain appears random and purposeless, it feels unbearable. A meaningless struggle crushes the spirit, making a person bitter, resentful, and weak. But when suffering is given meaning, when it is tied to something greater than the pain itself, it becomes a source of transformation rather than destruction. History is filled with individuals who have endured incredible hardship, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected to life's purpose. They did not escape suffering, nor did they deny it. Instead, they used it as fuel to become something greater. Finding meaning in struggle does not mean romanticizing pain or pretending that suffering is good in and of itself. Suffering is painful, it is difficult, but within that difficulty lies an opportunity. Struggle forces you to confront your weaknesses, to reassess your values, and to push yourself beyond what you thought possible. It is through adversity that people develop strength, resilience, and character. Without struggle, there is no growth. Without challenge, there is no transformation. Those who refuse to engage with their suffering, who numb themselves with distractions or wallow in self-pity, deny themselves the opportunity to become stronger. One of the most profound ways to find meaning in suffering is to recognize that it connects you to something larger than yourself. Every human being suffers. Every person you meet has experienced loss, fear, and disappointment. When you struggle, you join the shared experience of humanity. This realization can create a deep sense of purpose, as it reminds you that your suffering is not isolated. It is part of a greater story. Some of the greatest works of literature, philosophy, and art have emerged from the depths of suffering. Many of the world's most influential figures, leaders, writers, and visionaries endured incredible hardship and used their pain to create something meaningful. Their suffering was not meaningless because they gave it purpose. Another way to find meaning in struggle is through responsibility. If you are suffering, there are two paths: despair or responsibility. Despair leads nowhere. It is a dead end that offers nothing but more pain. Responsibility, however, provides a way forward. It asks, what can I do despite my suffering? How can I use this experience to better myself and others? Taking on responsibility, even in the smallest ways, creates a sense of purpose. It transforms suffering from something purely negative into something that has value. A person who is struggling with personal failure, for example, can use that failure as motivation to work harder, develop new skills, or help others who are facing similar challenges. A person who has experienced deep loss can find meaning by supporting those who are grieving. Meaning is not something that appears automatically. It must be created. It is the act of taking suffering and using it to build something worthwhile. Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who survived the horrors of concentration camps during World War II, wrote extensively about how meaning was the key to survival. He observed that those who had a reason to endure, whether it was faith, love, or a personal mission, were the ones who were most likely to survive. Even in the most extreme conditions, meaning gave people the strength to push forward. Finding meaning in struggle also requires shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing hardship as purely negative, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? Often, the most painful experiences lead to the most profound growth. A person who has never faced struggle remains weak, untested, and fragile. But a person who has endured suffering and emerged stronger carries within them a depth of wisdom and resilience that cannot be acquired in any other way. This does not mean that every struggle will reveal its meaning immediately. Sometimes it takes years to understand why a particular hardship was necessary. But if you adopt the mindset that suffering is not merely an obstacle but a teacher, you will eventually find the lessons hidden within it. You will see that the pain you endured helped shape you into someone more capable, more courageous, and more prepared to handle life's challenges. There is a choice in every moment of struggle to let suffering crush you or to use it as a tool for transformation. If you choose the latter, you take control of your suffering rather than letting it control you. You recognize that even in the darkest moments, there is an opportunity to grow, to strengthen your character, and to find a purpose that makes the struggle worthwhile. Ultimately, meaning is what makes suffering bearable. Without meaning, pain is just pain. But with meaning, pain becomes a stepping stone to something greater. It becomes the foundation upon which strength, wisdom, and purpose are built. Those who embrace this mindset do not become immune to suffering, but they do become unbreakable. They do not merely endure struggle, they transcend it. Life is chaotic by nature. It is filled with uncertainty, suffering, and unexpected challenges. No one is immune to the unpredictability of existence. And without structure, this chaos can easily overwhelm you. Many people find themselves lost, anxious, and directionless, not because they lack potential, but because they have failed to establish order in their own lives. When your surroundings are disorganized, your mind follows suit. When your responsibilities are neglected, stress accumulates. When your habits are destructive, your future becomes bleak. If you want to move forward, if you want to improve your life, you must begin by putting it in order. The first step to creating order is recognizing the areas of your life that are in disarray. This requires brutal honesty. It is easy to pretend that problems do not exist, to distract yourself with entertainment, or to blame external forces for your struggles. But avoidance does not solve problems. It amplifies them. Look at your life as it truly is. Is your environment messy? Are your relationships strained? Are you neglecting your responsibilities? Do you have habits that are leading you toward a worse future rather than a better one? These are not easy questions to ask, but they are necessary. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. Once you have identified the areas that need improvement, start small. Many people become overwhelmed when they try to change everything at once. They look at the mess around them, whether it is their home, their career, their health, or their mindset, and become paralyzed by the magnitude of the task. The key to creating order is to start with what is manageable. Clean your room, organize your schedule, set a bedtime and wake up time. If your relationships are fractured, take the first step toward repairing them. Even if it is something as simple as a sincere conversation, these small acts of order accumulate, and as they do, they provide the foundation for larger changes. Putting your life in order also means taking responsibility for yourself. Many people drift through life waiting for something external to fix their problems. A new job, a better relationship, more money, or recognition from others. But external changes will not bring order if your internal world remains chaotic. If you do not learn discipline, no amount of success will save you from self-destruction. If you do not cultivate good habits, no opportunity will lead to lasting fulfillment. If you do not take charge of your own actions, you will always feel at the mercy of circumstances. The first step to a better life is understanding that no one is coming to save you. It is your responsibility to put things in order. Order provides clarity. When your life is structured, you can see more clearly what needs to be done. You are no longer constantly reacting to emergencies or feeling overwhelmed by the unknown. You can make plans, set goals, and work toward them with intention. A person whose life is in order is not constantly burdened by stress and uncertainty. They are prepared. They know what needs to be done each day, and they do it. This sense of control over one's life leads to a greater sense of confidence and stability. However, creating order does not mean eliminating all chaos. Some level of unpredictability will always exist, and in many cases it is necessary for growth. Too much order can lead to rigidity, stagnation, and an inability to adapt. The goal is not to control every aspect of life, but to create enough structure that you are not consumed by disorder. It is about striking a balance, establishing enough routine and discipline to provide stability while remaining flexible enough to adapt to change. One of the most important aspects of putting your life in order is developing discipline. Without discipline, order cannot be maintained. It is easy to clean your room once, to wake up early for a few days, or to stick to a schedule for a week, but without consistency, these changes will not last. Discipline is what ensures that order is not a temporary state, but a permanent way of life. It means doing what needs to be done, even when you do not feel like it. It means holding yourself accountable, resisting distractions, and staying committed to your responsibility. A well-ordered life also creates a foundation for meaning and purpose. When your life is in chaos, it is difficult to focus on anything beyond immediate survival. You are constantly stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. But when you establish order, you create the space to pursue what truly matters. You can dedicate time to personal growth, meaningful relationships, and fulfilling work. A person whose life is in order is not constantly battling chaos. They are free to build something meaningful. Putting your life in order is not about achieving perfection. No one has everything completely figured out, and everyone faces setbacks. But order provides the structure needed to navigate life's difficulties with strength and resilience. It allows you to move forward with purpose rather than drifting aimlessly. It transforms you from someone who is controlled by circumstances into someone who actively shapes their own future. Start where you are, identify the areas that need improvement, take small but meaningful steps, establish discipline, maintain consistency. Over time, these efforts will compound, and you will find yourself living with greater clarity, strength, and purpose. Life will always contain difficulties, but with order, you will be prepared to face them. And in doing so, you will not only improve your own life, but also become a source of stability and strength for those around you.